Hello, I'm so glad you've joined with us this morning. If you're here for the first time, as a church, we've been going through a series looking at our well-being and how God has a plan for your well-being. And throughout this course, we've been following the journey of a guy called Elijah, who was an Old Testament prophet called by God to be his messenger to his people. His story is found in the book of 1 Kings. And so far we've seen how he's come from this incredible victory over the prophets of Baal, this false god, this incredible victory on Mount Carmel, to crashing and burning in the desert, asking God to take his life because of the death threats of Queen Jezebel. He was physically and emotionally exhausted, but he was also spiritually exhausted. He had reached spiritual burnout, and that's what we're going to be focusing on this morning. And Claire's with me as well, so she's going to be sharing too. But I think our spiritual well-being is perhaps one of the hardest things to spot when we are not really running full. It's hard to spot when we're running spiritually low. We all know when we're physically hungry. We all know when we're thirsty. We all know when we're physically hurt. It's an easy thing to spot. And perhaps our emotional well-being is a little harder to spot. But even if we're not so good at spotting our low emotional health, others can certainly spot it in our lives, and that can be really helpful. But spiritually, that's a little harder to spot. But I would say it's perhaps one of the most important areas we need to keep an eye on to make sure that we are running well in, because it absolutely impacts all the other areas. It impacts our emotional well-being. It impacts our relational well-being. It impacts our physical and mental well-being. It all flows out of a healthy spiritual place. Because ultimately we believe that God is the source of all true well-being. We looked at this word shalom in previous weeks, often translated as peace in our Bible, but it means so much more than that. It means a wholeness, a completeness. And God is our shalom. He is our peace. Our well-being is found in him. So let's visit Elijah again and see what we can learn from his experience. So there he is, hiding under a bush, sheltering from the sun in the wilderness, and God sends an angel to provide for him and bakes bread and gives it to him and provides him with water. He meets his physical needs. So let's take up the story in 1 Kings chapter 19, reading from verses 7 to 16. The angel of the Lord came back a second time and touched him and said, "Get up and eat, for the journey is too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank. Strengthened by that food, he travelled 40 days and 40 nights until he reached Horeb, the mountain of God. There he went into a cave and spent the night. And the word of the Lord came to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, "I've been very zealous for God. The Israelites have rejected your covenant, torn down your altars, and put your prophets to death with the sword. I'm the only one left, and now they're trying to kill me too." We saw previously that wasn't actually true. He wasn't the only one left, but that's how it felt to him. The Lord said, "Go out and stand on the mountain in the presence of the Lord, for the Lord is about to pass by." Then a great and powerful wind tore the mountain apart and shattered the rocks before the Lord. But the Lord was not in the wind. After the wind there was an earthquake, but the Lord was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came fire, but the Lord was not in the fire. After the fire came a gentle whisper. When Elijah heard it, he pulled his cloak over his face and went out and stood at the mouth of the cave. Then a voice said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" He replied, saying exactly the same thing as he said before, "I've been very jealous for the Lord Almighty. The Israelites have rejected your covenants, torn down your altars, put your prophets to death with the sword. I am the only one left, and now they're going to try and kill me too." Then the Lord said to him, Go back the way you came and go to the desert of Damascus. When you go there, anoint Hazael king over Aram. Also anoint Jehu, son of Nimshi, king over Israel. And anoint Elisha, son of Shaphat, from Abel Mahola, to succeed you as prophet. Don't you just love those Bible names? So God continues to meet Elijah's needs. He restores his physical strength. He allows Elijah to really vent his frustration and his disappointment to God. And that's really important. God is big enough for all our frustrations and our doubts. It's okay to process our disappointments. In fact, we should before God. Because then he can bring his comfort. Then he can bring his presence. And that, above all else, is what Elijah needed. Even though he didn't know it at the time, what he needed most was a fresh encounter with the presence of God. So I just want to draw out some things that really speak to me through this and hopefully will help you too. Firstly, the thing that jumps out of me first and foremost is every time God meets Elijah's needs, it's God's initiative. He takes the first step. You know, Elijah didn't ask for food. He didn't ask for rest. He didn't ask for a fresh encounter. He wanted to die. And yet, God knew exactly what he needed at the right time. And he knows exactly what you need right now. Looking after our physical and emotional well-being is vitally important. But the one thing that will bring us greatest transformation to our lives above everything else is a fresh encounter with the presence of God, to be spiritually refreshed. You know, yes, God is everywhere. He's omnipresent. And yet there's these times where we can know a deepening sense of awareness that, wow, God is here right now. An awareness of his presence, a sense of intimacy, a sense of awe. You know, more than just God is everywhere, but God is right here with me. Even the fact that we can have such an encounter with God is only because, yet again, God made the first move. He took the initiative. Romans 5:9 says, "It was while we were still sinners that Christ died for us." We didn't know what we needed, but God did. He made the first move by sending Jesus to pay the price for all our sin, past, present, and future, and remove that barrier of hostility, that separation between us and God. Remove it entirely so we can know this intimate relationship with God, so we can experience this transforming encounter with God's presence. God made the first move because he loved Elijah, and he loves you too, and he knows what you need. And what you need most of all is to know him and encounter him afresh. Secondly, notice the nature of the encounter. God could have met Elijah anywhere. And yet Elijah treks for 40 days through tough terrain and then climbs yet another mountain. Why? I think it has a lot to do with expectation. An expectation to meet with God, because this mountain wasn't just any other mountain. This was the mountain of God. This was also known as Mount Sinai. It was the place where Moses had encountered God in Exodus 33 when he said, "Show me your glory." And he hid in the cleft of the rock as God's goodness and grace and mercy passed by. He couldn't look at God's face and live. He just saw the back of God passing by. An incredible encounter with God. It was the place where God gave Moses the 10 Commandments. In other words, it was a place of encounter. And Elijah would have been well aware of the significance of this place. There would have been an expectation rising within him. This is a place of covenant. This is a place of direction. This is a place of protection. This was a place of encounter. So there would have been a great expectation. This is God's mountain. And I think sometimes God has to take us back to a place where our expectation levels rise to encounter him. You know, sometimes that can be just somewhere as simple as a place in the home set aside where you speak with God. A chair in the corner of the room, your study, wherever it is, that place where you go, where you know God has spoken to you before. And that's actually the place where I set aside time to hear him. There's an expectation when you go there, I'm going to meet with God. You know, maybe that's why we think we kind of expect to encounter God in large meetings and in large numbers. Because there's that expectation there. We say that I know I'm going to meet God there. When I used to travel to work in Chiswick, I used to stop off in Richmond Park, and there would be this log that I would sit on. And that would be the place where I would just have a chat with God. And it became a special place, not because it was a special log, but because it actually became special because I met with God there. There would be an expectation to meet with God there. You know, God is just as willing to meet with you right now, wherever you're at, on the sofa. It just requires an expectation to meet with him. The wonderful thing is we don't have to trek 40 days and nights across a wilderness. We don't have to climb a mountain to encounter God because of his finished work on the cross. Jesus promises to pour out his Spirit on every single person, his presence to be with us at all times. And Jesus describes it in John 4 as a spring of living water welling up within us. This is the promise for everyone who puts their trust in him. We can encounter God and be spiritually refreshed and transformed in his presence wherever we are. But we do need to be expectant, and we do need to keep coming back to this spring within, to keep hungering and thirsting for God, because the danger is the more comfortable we become, the more our appetite for God diminishes, and we start then looking to other sources for satisfaction. And perhaps that's why Elijah had to travel such a long way in the desert. This food and water that had strengthened him for the journey would soon run out. Maybe it was a reminder that what he really needed was spiritual food that would never run out. Because thirdly, along with an expectation of encounter, we need to develop a hunger and a thirst to encounter God, to be spiritually refreshed. God made the first move, but we need to hunger for more of him. And so often we need to be taken out of our comfort zones to trigger a fresh hunger for God. I really believe that's what God is doing at this time, where so much of what we have been comfortable with and even kind of complacent about has been stripped away. I believe God is doing that for a reason, to help us hunger after him.
Yeah, we have definitely been sensing, and we've heard from many other leaders, both locally but also nationally and internationally, that God is stirring something new in us. That actually he's putting the reset button on so many things. He's making us aware of where we've just sat back, perhaps, where we've just let ourselves coast, and perhaps even where we've lost ground rather than pushing into more of him. Now, many of you will know about Hannah. I know I've shared about it before. The 22-year-old girl who more than a month ago now had a sudden bleed on her brain, and she has been in a coma ever since. Amazingly, she is beginning to respond, and there have been small miracles. And actually on Friday, she actually responded to the physios and actually used her voice, made a sound for the first time, which is just incredible. But her family have been coming together to pray for her healing twice a day on Zoom, and they've invited anybody who wants to join with them. And actually, the simplicity of worshipping and spending time before God in prayer, honestly wrestling. They are very honest about the struggles and how difficult it has been, but also praising God for who he is. They always put that first. Worship always comes first. And it's been such a privilege to be a part of that. But also it's become a source of real life to me and to those who have been joining. And her own family have been sensing that there's something bigger and wider going on here, that it isn't just about waking up Hannah. Actually, it's about waking up the church. Now, her sister Abby told me, I think the story of Hannah has just stirred up so many hearts in faith for her healing. So many who don't even know her are crying out, and it's just like a real hunger for God. Already we've heard of people coming back to faith or being woken up in their spirit to trust God again. As I've cried out to God to give me back my sister, I've also had a heart cry for the church, for us as his people to come back to his feet and to stand in faith and in adoration. We've been forced to look to him as he's all we've had, but it feels so much bigger. This nation is desperate for a touch of God, for a fresh sense of his love, and we felt his presence like never before as we spend our days simply trusting, talking, and worshipping God. He is transforming us as we wait, and it's like his body, his church, is with us. One thing about Hannah is she loves the church. She was so sad about how lockdown affected her church community and rhythm. She is so passionate about community and fellowship. I can't wait to show her what God has been doing. Her favourite song is Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus. And while we wait, the church has been doing just that. It's beautiful.
That is just so inspiring. And I really believe God is wanting to rouse his church from sleeping under a bush like Elijah and making that journey to encounter him afresh, to get to that place of expectation and deep hunger for him to move once again in the nations. You know, where we've got into routines and ruts, God, I believe, is recommissioning us to come out of our caves to the work that we have been anointed and appointed to do. Like Elijah being commissioned once again to be a kingmaker, to be shaping, to be a restoring force in his day. God has called us to also be a restoring force in our day. But it has to start here with encountering the very presence of God. You know, as we read, God demonstrated his power through rock-shattering wind and earthquake, through thunder and fire. Elijah had seen the fire of God fall on the last mountain he was on, yet this time God was found in the whisper. Whispers are only used to communicate to individuals. They're intimate, they're personal. You don't whisper to a crowd. You whisper to an individual. It speaks of relationship. And so after this epic 40-day journey and this mountain climb and all this earthquake and fire and thunder, what does God finally say to Elijah? The exact same thing he said to him before while he was sheltering in the cave. What are you doing here, Elijah? And yet, the difference though, was this time Elijah had come out of his cave and was in the very presence of God. The presence of God is where we find freedom. The presence of God is where we find joy. The presence of God, 2 Corinthians 3 says, is where we are transformed. And Elijah, from what it seems, was indeed transformed because he then goes down the mountain back to the work God had called him to do. You know, the heart of our spiritual well-being, it's not a set of beliefs. It's not a set of rules to follow. The heart of our spiritual well-being, it's all about relationship with God himself. That's the very heart of it. And as I was preparing this this week, I really felt that some of us are praying for demonstrations of God's power. We're praying for breakthrough. We're desperate for God to change a particular situation. And I felt God is saying to us that actually the answer is in his whisper. He's calling you first and foremost to a deeper intimacy with him. Yes, he is all powerful, and yes, he does have all things in hand. But right now, he's wanting to draw you closer to him, to step out of that cave and encounter his love and his presence afresh, personally. I believe generally God is calling all of us away from second-hand faith, even over-reliance on Sunday services. You know, important as they are not a substitute for your own personal walk with God. I believe at this time God is calling us to greater intimacy and personal relationship with him. Church, I believe God is calling for a people who really know him, who are prepared to shut out the noise and the distractions and the things that clamour for our attention, and to listen out for this gentle whisper. To come as we are, yes, with all our hang-ups, but to the God who has already made the first move.
Yes, this drawing back to intimacy is something that has really been coming out in those Zoom calls for Hannah. And like any relationship, drawing closer means you need to spend more time with God, to set aside time to be with him. And if we don't do that, sometimes he kind of makes us do that. As many of you will know, a few years ago, I started to have some problems with the hearing in one of my ears. And when I got the ear checked out, I was told that my hearing was still within the normal range, but they have actually discovered a perforation that they wanted me to have a small operation to sort out. And so I spent the beginning of that following year in hospital for what should have been a very quick and easy operation. And yet I had quite a bad reaction to the anaesthetic, and I found myself incredibly nauseous for quite a long time afterwards, and I had to rest a lot. And when I went back 6 months later just to be signed off and they tested my hearing again, they told me it was the same as it had been before the operation, which they had told me could be a possibility. Now, I went home quite dejected. I'd had a lot of prayer for healing beforehand, and we were holding on to the fact that perhaps my healing was going to come through the operation. So my question to God was, well, why did I have to go through all of that? Why did I have to have an operation? And I really heard him say very clearly in my mind, it was all about getting you to slow down. And that actually resulted in us looking at our diaries and how much we had booked in. And I did make some big changes. It did cause me to slow down. Now, I recognise that we do live life in seasons. God has set up the world. In nature, we can see the different seasons. And sometimes life is much busier than at other moments. And for us in the last year and currently, we have been a lot busier than we have been at other times. But I have still tried to regularly practice just being with God, taking that time aside because I've really needed to. And one of the things that I love doing is just taking myself off just before I start work. And it's a little bit more tricky now there are 4 of us working in the house, but just sitting in silence before God. Because I've learned the power of solitude and silence. Now, solitude is not the same as isolation. It is about just being with the one who knows you best and loves you the most. Sometimes when I try and be still, lots of thoughts come straight into my mind, distracting me. And sometimes I just have to sit there quietly and gently, letting them go. But you know, God waits for that to happen because he doesn't shout over the noise. He doesn't clamour to get our attention over the loudness that we seem to have got used to as a culture, haven't we? There's just a lot of noise around. We really need these times of quiet just to connect with him. Because as we've seen with Elijah, he does tend to come up close, draw us close and whisper to us. Sometimes to help me just to draw close to him, I have utilized what are called short breath prayers. So I say a short prayer when I inhale and then finish the sentence with a longer exhale. So things such as, be still and know that I am God, or Lord Jesus, be my guide today. And just inviting him in or reflecting on a truth from his word in that way just really nourishes my soul and just kind of sets me back on course. It just kind of invites him to come and commune with me, and I draw close. And I've noticed in the devotional, wellbeing devotional for this week, Dave Smith also mentioned something called Lectio Divinia, and that's simply the slow, purposeful reading of scripture. And he says it as an example of a way of learning to listen to God. And can I just really encourage you to make time and space to try that out? It's something that the book club has been utilising for many months now, and we find it is a really rich resource. As I've said, I recognise that we live in seasons, and currently in this pandemic there seems to be two extremes: those who've got incredibly busy and others of us who are finding the days are just stretching out long and lonely. So for those of us who may have that extra space and time currently, I know that loneliness is a very big battle, especially where we're being asked to stay at home. And there's been a lot of research that's shown that comfort eating and binge watching, doing things that are not so good for us spiritually, mentally, physically and emotionally, are really tempting. There's been a huge rise in those. So try and be aware of how your habits might have changed, but also try and put in some positive ones. I'd say try and take some time just to be with Jesus intentionally each day. And actually, if you are on your own, it's a lovely idea just to, as you're making your lunch, to invite Jesus to be with you, as you're sitting down to have a cup of coffee. But also in those moments where the loneliness might feel like it's totally overwhelming you, or you're feeling really desperate, to also not hide from him in those moments, but come before him and be just totally honest. He wants you to draw close in every moment. And for those of us who are exceedingly busy, it's learning to practice the presence, as Brother Lawrence coined the phrase. And that is really just about inviting him into every single aspect of our daily lives and keeping the lines of communication open as we work, as we do anything, simple household tasks as well. And then God can just surprise us with little snippets of wisdom, love and care as we remain open to him throughout our day. And I found that happened to me. God just surprised me in a very small but intimate way just this week. I had a really busy hour one day. I was trying to meet a deadline. I'd stuck the Zoom call Prayer for Hannah on because I wanted to hear the update. And I was also quite on edge because I knew right next door Ben was sitting a biology test. And I was really invested in that, possibly more so than him, because I'd been helping him revise. I was desperate to know how he got on. And he came out, having totally smashed it, which was fantastic, but he was much more interested in getting us to go and play ping pong, which is quite often what we do on our dining room table in his break times. So we started doing that, and it was as we were playing, I just suddenly felt God whisper to me, as a parent, you were so invested in finding out how he'd got on in that test. But I am so much more invested in each one of you and how you are changing to be more like Jesus. I was really distracted. I wasn't intentionally drawing close to God, but I'd had those lines of communication open, and he used a really everyday illustration and just whispered to me even as I was doing something else. And it was such a source of encouragement to me.
Yeah, that's so good and such helpful advice as well. But please do hear that truth. God is deeply invested in you. He knows what you need for your spiritual well-being. You know, no one and nothing can satisfy you like he can. No one else knows what you need more than he does. And while, you may not understand his ways, you can trust him. And so I just encourage you, you can make that decision today. I'm going to hunger and thirst after him. I'm going to make that space. I'm going to be expectant to encounter him afresh. Maybe you've never put your faith in Jesus. You can respond today, simply in your heart, out loud, however you want to do it. Say something like, Jesus, I'm fed up of going my own way. Please forgive me. Thank you that you made the first move by dying for me so that I can go your way, that I can know you personally. I place my life into your everlasting arms now. Amen. If you prayed that prayer for the first time or just recommitted your life to God, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to support you on your journey of greater spiritual well-being. But perhaps I can ask Claire to pray for all of us in this journey to greater spiritual well-being. We've been hearing God has been shaking things. He's been making us uncomfortable for a reason. I believe, as we've been saying, he's stirring up a hunger in our hearts. And so we need to respond, don't we? So, yeah, if you're happy to pray for us.
Yeah, Lord, we just want to thank you so much that you did make that first move, and that your heart, you long for us to draw close to you in a deeper intimacy. And God, first and foremost, we want to say sorry. Sorry for those times when things have got tough, or we've just been fed up, we've turned to things other than you to satisfy us. Lord, when we know that we haven't done everything we could to draw close to you, Lord, that maybe some of us, as Steve and I have been speaking, have just sense, I've become complacent, or yes, I know I'm comfortable, or yes, I realise I'm actually quite lost now. I don't have the usual physical meeting on a Sunday and physical midweek meeting. And God, perhaps you are just stirring us to come direct to you for ourselves, to understand that actually even the good things like church can be a crutch, and actually that you want to strip everything away in terms of us understanding that we are to come directly to you, that you are our shalom, you are our source. And God, all those good things are great disciplines for us to keep a check on our spiritual health, but God, they are not to take the place of you ever. And God, we just pray you'll help us to realign ourselves with you where we need to. God, that you'll help us to make the time and the space, however is best for us and our own particular situation, just to draw close to you each day going forward, to make the room for the quietness to be able to hear your whisper. And God, we just want to say thank you, and we are expectant to hear from you. We are excited to know that you are on the move, that you want to stir up your church to deeper and bigger things with you. Yeah. And God, we just want to make ourselves available. We want to humble ourselves and say, yes, we know we can do nothing without you. We know we are nothing without you. And we just, want to come back to you. God, help each one of us just to have just a sober look at our own spiritual health this week, and just come before you in repentance where we need to, and just come before you with the joy of our salvation afresh too, Lord. I really believe that's something else that you want to help us each to experience. This has been a wearying time, but you are the source of our joy too. Amen. And joy in you strengthens us. Yes. So I just want to speak that out over us too, Lord.
Amen.
Just pray your Holy Spirit will drop fresh portion of joy into our hearts. Thank you, Lord Jesus, that you are at work. Thank you, Lord, that our spiritual health is actually all about just having a deeper relationship with you, which is just so incredible. Thank you, Lord Jesus. We love you. Yeah. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Thank you. And thank you all for joining us this morning. Please do drop us a line. If you'd like personal prayer, contact us on prayer@riverchurchsutton.org. Or if you just want to say hi, then hello@riverchurchsutton.org. If you'd like to perhaps investigate an Alpha course, we run Alpha courses periodically just to explore the Christian faith in a really open and relaxed way. It'll be online, on Zoom, but again, email alpha@riverchurchsutton.org. Apart from that, all we can say is God bless you. Have a wonderful week. We'll be back here, same place, same time. See you then.